Good afternoon. My name is Dallas Goldtooth. Dakota Michaja ki mukamani de miedo. Dakota wichashta himachado. Ocheti shakon wichashta himachado. My name is Dallas Goldtooth. I'm Dakota, and I am of the Ocheti Shakoni, the 7 council fires, also known as the Great Sioux Nation of the Dakota, Lakota, Nakota. Our traditional homelands span from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains to the Great Plains of Saskatchewan down to the Great Plains of Nebraska. And it is my family, I have family members that are from Standing Rock, are Hunkpapa Oyate, on the front line fighting against Dakota Access Pipeline. And I am the Keep It in the Ground campaign organizer for the Indigenous Environmental Network. And a major component of my work is to help frontline communities fight against fossil fuel infrastructure projects such as the Dakota Access Pipeline.
Thank you, and please feel free to proceed with your information, the facts of this case, and additional information for the judges.
Thank you. The ancestral homelands, as I mentioned in my introduction, of the Ocheti Shakoni span across a vast amount of land in what is known as the Great Plains, upper Midwest of the so-called United States of America. In 2014, the Dakota Access Pipeline, a pipeline owned and planned by the fossil fuel company Energy Transfer Partners, was announced. And this pipeline was proposed to carry Bakken oil, crude oil, from the Bakken oil fields of North Dakota down to Patoka, Illinois. In this area is the homelands of the Ocheti Shakoni. In 1868, there was a treaty that was negotiated between the Sioux Indians, also the Ocheti Shakoni, and the United States government. And the boundaries of that treaty of our territories is marked on this image, as you can see here. The Bakken oil fields is a oil play up in North Dakota, Montana, and Saskatchewan areas. It was discovered in 1953, and it was one of the largest oil plays currently in operation in the United States for natural gas and oil. The Dakota Access Pipeline was over 1,200 miles long, and it is proposed to carry over 450,000 barrels of oil per day. As you can see, it crosses right through the ancestral homelands of the Ocheti Shakoni peoples. The Ocheti Shakoni are a people that depend and have a vibrant relationship with the land itself and the waters that cross through it. The Mini-Shoshe is also known as the Missouri River. It is the cloudy waters. It is the lifeblood of our people. It is the backbone of our nation, crossing right through the center of it. The Dakota Access Pipeline passes right through the territories of our people, as well as the territories of many other tribes along the Missouri River. A major point of contention was its crossing near the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. As you can see in the map here, the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation borders ends at the Cannonball River, and the pipeline was planned to cross just a mile north of the reservation borders and a mile and a half north of the water intake, the primary water intake for the tribal nation itself. One major point of contention in this case was that the tribe and many of the members of the Ocheti Shakoni maintain that we are not only looking at the reservation borders, but we are also looking at the integrity of the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty boundaries, which went all the way up to the Heart River. The territory boundaries were farther north, and it ends just south of Mandan, what is now Mandan, North Dakota. This Standing Rock Sioux tribe, major point of contention was on 2 issues. That the tribe was never properly consulted by the federal government as required by federal policy in the impacts of this pipeline upon their water, upon their treaty rights, their fishing rights, and just in general impacts upon the communities and the water intake, primary water intake, just south of the proposed crossing. In the photo here, you can see a close-up of the construction site and the path in which the pipeline crossed the Missouri River. And just south of it is the Cannonball River. On the southern end is the boundaries of the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe Reservation. The second point of contention in the argument that Standing Rock Sioux Tribe presented is that the proposed crossing and the route of the pipeline crosses right through significant cultural sites held sacred by the tribe itself and also neighboring tribal nations of the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara nations farther upriver. The island that you can see in the photo here is a significant cultural site for many peoples, as well as the confluence of the Cannonball River and the Missouri River holds a cultural and spiritual significance for the Cheyenne tribes, as well as the Oceti-Sakowin tribes. Our relationship as Oceti-Sakowin people is based off the land. Our languages are based off the land. Our heritage and our culture and our instructions on how to live in a healthy relationship, a healthy, balanced way of life is based on a relationship to the land. The Bakken pipeline is a part of a larger system to deliver oil to the Gulf Coast. The first segment, the Dakota Access Pipeline, was merely transported to Patoka, Illinois, from which another pipeline system would deliver it down to the Gulf Coast. In response to this project, grassroots people and Oceti-Sakowin relatives stood up in resistance to this project. The argument that was put forth was that we have a sacred duty to uphold the spiritual integrity of Mother Earth, and that her rights were being violated by Energy Transfer Partners, by Dakota Access Pipeline, in the federal government with the planning and the proposed path of this project. There's a number of photos from the project itself, cutting through wide swaths of pristine prairie lands. In response to the resistance that we saw, this indigenous resistance in Standing Rock, we saw an alarming escalation of a military-style police presence. 24-hour, 24/7 police observation, helicopters flying over our camps 24/7 for months on end. We saw dog attacks, dogs used upon people who are using, in their belief, whose purpose in being there was in defense of Mother Earth and the rights of Mother Earth. We saw the use of water cannons, microwave cannons, pepper spray, rubber bullets used upon peaceful water protectors. And there's a particular moment that I want to speak on, a moment that highlights the violations that we saw. There was a site that was identified by a number of archaeologists and tribal archaeologists and historians as being grave markers, as being culturally significant sites. And they identified those sites right in the middle of the pipeline easement. And in order for them to stop construction, they had to have the state of North Dakota come down and look at their field notes and agree with the state or the tribal historians and archaeologists. The state historians couldn't come until 2 days later. So in between the time when the state representatives showed up and when the tribe identified the sites, Dakota Access Pipeline, the Dakota Access Company bulldozed the site before state officials could monitor or could identify those sites. So water protectors in the hundreds crossed the line to stop construction on behalf of Mother Earth, using a necessity defense that we have to defend the rights of Mother Earth at all costs. The Oceti-Sakowin camps became at one point the 10th largest city in North Dakota. We have seen over 700 water protectors arrested, all on behalf of protecting the water, the spiritual integrity of the land, and our sacred relationship as Oceti-Sakowin people with Mother Earth. The arguments that we put forth is that this was not only an issue of protecting our rights, our treaty rights, is an issue of upholding the rights of Mother Earth to live in balance. So this is my presentation as an expert about the fight against Dakota Access Pipeline and water protectors in the Oceti-Sakowin standing up on behalf of Mother Earth.
We have a question from one of our judges.
Thank you so much for your presentation and also for all the incredible work that you've done, Dallas, at the Standing Rock Movement for a long time. Because this is a land defender, earth defender case, and we're getting into the topic here of the relationship between rights of nature and human rights violations. I wonder if you could speak some on the relationship between human rights and specifically indigenous human rights in this case and those violations. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a...
No, I don't think there's an additional question. Go ahead. You can answer that question.
Okay, thank you. It's a painful thing to experience in the days, you would think that we wouldn't have seen the things we saw in Standing Rock, given it's 2017, 2016 at the time. But the usage, a lot of people reference a key moment in the usage of attack dogs and dogs upon peaceful civilians. And the violations of our rights to defend, or to defend our right to clean water. Our people were sprayed with water in below freezing temperatures, threatening their lives. We've had individuals who have lost limbs due to concussion grenades shot by police. We've had relatives that are now blind because of being shot in the eye, losing the quality of life has been extremely diminished. And collectively, overall, we saw an attack by the state of North Dakota upon the ability for entire peoples to determine what happens to their communities, their water, their air, and their bodies. And an overall diminishment of the quality of life of those people moving ahead. So it is my belief that that falls in line with an attack on their human rights.
Okay. And I believe that the judge for this case has a question now as well.
Thank you very much for your presentation and for showing also the photo of your protest and the attacks that you suffered. I would like to know if there was before the attacks a kind of propaganda against the activists and the community, and if after the attacks there was a public declaration of the institutions and the authorities, and in which meaning, which kind of declaration?
I'll go back here. Through the duration of the fight against the Dakota Access Pipeline, the communities of the Standing Rock Sioux Nation experienced a lot of discrimination by the local communities, in particular the communities of Bismarck and Mandan, where a lot of individual citizens, or citizens overall of the Standing Rock Sioux Nation, were discriminated against, were bullied, in public spaces where there was predominantly non-native communities. A lot of our water protectors, people who have traveled long distance, a lot of indigenous peoples, were discriminated or persecuted for merely being there in support of the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe's fight for clean water to protect their water. We saw an escalation of the criminalization of peaceful protest. We saw the escalation of a military response to peaceful gathering. We saw the diminishment of the right for people to express their opinion about having clean water. And we had over 700 arrests made through this fight, and pending cases still standing. So that's what I can speak to. That to this day, one of the most negative consequences is that the state of North Dakota initiated a blockade of a primary road leading in to the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe. They blocked the road for over 6 months. The primary road to the tribe's casino, which was the primary source of income for the tribe. And it was a firm belief of tribal leaders and community leaders that it was done very purposefully to directly impact the income of the tribal nation and provide social services for their citizens. The other consequence of that blockade that was put by the state of North Dakota was that emergency services could not get to the tribal nation and local communities. What would normally have been a 20-minute ambulance ride to the hospital became an hour and a half to 2-hour trip. And during the actual protests and during the actual encampments there was many instances of EMT and emergency services not being provided or outright denied to citizens due to the location of where they were at, quote unquote, being on the reservation or in the camps, the resistance camps themselves.
Sí, me gustaría saber qué repercusión o qué solidaridad. Bueno, ¿qué repercusión tiene en el resto de los Estados Unidos y qué solidaridad de las comunidades llamadas blancas?
What we saw in Standing Rock was the largest mobilization of indigenous solidarity and unification in living memory. We saw a unification of indigenous peoples across North America, South America, and Africa, as well as representatives of the Sami peoples from Sapni come to Standing Rock in solidarity. And one of the key issues that unified people was the issue of water. We had a number of tribal nations that they too were fighting to protect their rivers. Come to Standing Rock because they saw the connection. They saw the nature of the attacks upon the river's right to provide a spiritual fulfillment for people, for Native peoples. They saw the diminishment of communities and Native indigenous peoples' right to hunt, to fish, and to gather medicines along the riverways as they have always done since time immemorial. And we also saw this beautiful movement of solidarity across the globe of people standing in support of Standing Rock, and has given birth to this massive divestment movement that we're seeing in the moment right now.
One last question, at least I have one question. If the tribunal is here today to take this information and then provide feedback and potentially a verdict or some sort of direction for remedy, what would you like them to say in face of all the challenges and violations that you and Mother Earth have faced? What would you like to hear, some of which the tribunal might say tomorrow or today?
I would say first and foremost that that the spiritual integrity of Mother Earth should come first as we examine our relationship to Mother Earth, not only as society, but as well as nation states. That indigenous people's right to maintain a healthy relationship with the river, our rivers, is essential, but also our right to speak on behalf of our waters and of the land itself, as determined in our original instructions. We would like to see a support of the argument that what we saw in Standing Rock and the militarization and the police response and the actions, the violent acts upon peaceful water protectors was a violation of their human rights for indigenous peoples. A violation of human rights as well as a violation of indigenous rights.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm going to first introduce myself in my language. So sorry translators if you're there, but Dosha, Margoats, Marashima Ishuya heads. And so in Hiradza, I just said, hello relatives, my name is Eagle Woman. My colonized name, my English name is Candy Mosset. I'm a member of the Mandan, Hiradza, Arikara nations in North Dakota, and we live in the extraction zone of where this oil that flows through the pipeline comes from. And it's something that people often don't talk about or don't understand or have forgotten about since the camp was removed.
Thank you, and please go forward and provide some of the facts and information for the tribunal.
Thank you. There are 5 reservations in the state of North Dakota. The Mandan, Hiradza, Arikara nations are just north of Standing Rock, which is predominantly in South Dakota. The tip of which you can see on the bottom there exists in North Dakota. We have, as Dallas pointed out, been dealing with a lot of problems. What this picture does show, in 1944, there was something called the Flood Control Act, also known as the Pick-Sloan Act, on the Missouri River, which dammed that river, and it created a series of dams where the stars are located. Those dams, incidentally, each were below a reservation, so it flooded our reservation lands in the late 1940s, early 1950s, which is when our tribes were forced into a cash economy. Our dam, when I say our, I mean Mandan, Hiradza, Arikara, is the Garrison Dam, and then in Standing Rock is the Oahe Dam. So 2 bodies of water that we were forced to have upon our land by the US government that then became our main drinking water sources for our people. These areas you can see on this map here go from Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota down through Nebraska. When we were forced into this cash economy, we started taking care of our reservoirs, Lake Sakakawea, Lake Oahe, and saying, okay, this is what we're forced with by the federal government, and so we will now use these the way they tell us to. But what happened, what a lot of people don't understand in the history, my reservation of Fort Berthold here, which was originally about 12 million acres, and then was seceded through executive order, eminent domain over the years to just under 1 million acres. There were villages. So if you look at the dark blue, that's the original Missouri River. And the light blue is then Lake Sakakawea, the flooded area. They removed us completely, displaced us, and this was the second time because we were put on this reservation in 1860 against our will. That's why it's called Fort Berthold. And 9 of our villages and communities were completely inundated. We were forced out. We fought the government then and we lost. We have graveyards that are still down there. Back then, we had all of our own resources. We were farming tribes, so we had corn, squash, beans. They flooded all of our Class 1 and Class 2 agricultural lands in this transaction. So that's a bit of the history of the Missouri River that we have relied upon for time immemorial because we're farming tribes. We relied upon the water for our sources. That is all prior to the Bakken shale oil play that Dallas has talked about. We also have coal-fired power plants in North Dakota, so some people don't understand that every single bit of the over 11,000 miles of rivers, lakes, and streams in North Dakota was contaminated with mercury before the oil extraction in the Bakken even started. So this assault is on top of that. North Dakota started seeing rigs like this everywhere. Around 2006, we started being attacked by the industry. Instead of having these natural gas captured, it was a byproduct of the industry. And so the flares go into the air and we're breathing that in. Our kids are getting sick. I'm a cancer survivor already as a result of the industry. Giving you some background and history again. The oil industry, when they came, devastated our communities, not only in an environmental way, but in a social way. So what you're looking at right here are just headlines that I took out of the local newspapers that you'll never see in mainstream media, talking about some of the things that happened to us. Again, all prior to the Dakota Access Pipeline. At the time, we were fighting against trains, we were fighting against semi-trucks, and so then the brainchild of the industry was to have this pipeline to move this oil. Meanwhile, we have our communities being devastated by man camps, by sex trafficking, by women and children being raped, by men coming into our communities, by drugs tearing us apart. This is the kind of sickness that goes into the pipeline now. Then came the Ocheti-Shakowee camp. That's when, finally, in 2014, the Standing Rock Sioux tribe stood up and said no to the company, we do not want this. 2015, they said no, we do not want this, to Energy Transfer Partners, to this company. And still, in 2016, they began to build. And they came. And that's when the world started to take notice. They started to see that something was wrong here. The community of Bismarck is a 93% white community. That dotted line is showing you where one of the pipeline routes originally was, and they said, no, we do not want it. It's very important to remember that the dark line is where the pipeline route did go through because it wasn't impacting Bismarck anymore. It was impacting the tribe. And then it was approved. And then it was okay. Cutting across 4 states, it now connects in Patoka, Illinois, to the Bayou Bridge pipeline, where people are still fighting. It goes all the way down to Port Arthur, Texas, where it's refined at Motiva. Motiva is the dirtiest oil refinery in the United States, and it is now 100% owned by Saudi Arabia, who is now investing $2 million into renewable energies, but of course they should, because they can have a plant in the United States to be polluting. And what comes out of the Bakken, where we get all the pollution, continues out to other countries. This is August 2016, when our women broke down the fences and ran out into the fields with their war cries, running out, putting up their flags, stopping the machinery and equipment. This is when a call out went out to the rest of the world. Help us. Stand with us at Standing Rock by LaDonna Allard, and a landowner that lives close. And she did not know that so many people would come, but within 2 days, 200 people showed up. Women started to get arrested. We started doing actions in Bismarck. August is when they put up the barricade that Dallas talked about on the road. So we started having our own resistance. We went to Bismarck and we said, we're going to inconvenience you, Bismarck, and show you what it's like for us to be inconvenienced. We did banner drops off the bridges. We had a canoe action to go out onto the water and took our children with us. We stood in solidarity with Another Gulf as Possible at the time. In September, as Dallas talked about, they came and raped our lands. There were 3 graves that were completely disturbed, 9 altogether, when that happened. It's like going The land was also sold to the company at that time in what we thought was an illegal purchase, but they got away with it. In October, we continued to fight. This is supposed to be Native American Month in the United States. What we got was a line of police forces coming out and attacking us. October 27th was when the first treaty camp was removed violently by police forces. So we reached out for help. Mark Ruffalo came, the Reverend came, they stood in solidarity with us, but when they left, the police attacked. We decided that we were going to forgive them for attacking us and did a love, prayer, and healing walk, forgiving the police. While that was happening, and in spite of the fact that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers did not issue the permit yet at that time, they began building and the well pad site on top of the hill. They had no permit, but they started building anyways. These images might be disturbing to some of you, but the reality is that we were literally attacked by the United States military and police forces from 7 states. We were shot at with less than lethal weapons. But at a close range, they are deadly. Sophia Volansky still doesn't have proper use of her arm because she was hit by one of these smoke bombs, grenades, we're not entirely sure. Person standing next to her said it first hit her in the chest and then bounced onto her arm before it exploded. What would have happened to her? Look at her arm. What would have happened to her if it hit her and exploded on her chest just seconds before? Susie Desba is blind for the rest of her life in her right eye because she got hit by a rubber bullet in her face. People were almost paralyzed when they were hit in the back, shot in the back by cowards. When people went into the medics on November 20th, there were over 500 people that went into the medics. All of these shots were in the groin area and in the face. They were purposely shooting at us, using us like target practice in the face and in the groin. That was all done by the police and the Army National Guard to protect a pipeline against people who wanted to protect their water. So in December, President Obama at the time, former president, finally stood up and said, okay, we're not going to sign the agreement, but we already knew number 45, Trump, was elected. And so we celebrated for one night at the camp. The veterans came and they apologized on behalf of the military for what happened to us. We had runners from Canada that ran in January and still came to the camps to stand in solidarity with us. But times were changing. Elders were telling us we might have to think about leaving. We didn't want anyone to die, but people were ready to die. So in January, we started moving out. We went into Washington, D.C. We participated in marches, the Women's March. We said, we are here, we are women rising up. We're trying to hold space in this camp, and as women, we are being attacked because we are trying to defend our children. And in February, we were told, you either leave or we're going to force you to leave. We weren't sure what was going to happen. So people started taking down yurts. I was there with my daughter for 7 months. The psychological warfare that they used against us, you can't imagine what it was like. It was really horrific. And yet there was so much beauty with the singing and the songs and the solidarity and the coming together of tribal nations. And they came with their tanks and they came with their guns. You know, we had sage in one hand and sweetgrass in the other, our medicines. And they had guns, machine guns, against unarmed mothers and children, and forced us, grandmothers, out of the camp. arresting close to 800 people who are still going through the court system. But we continue to stand because we don't have a choice. They might have come and they might have forced us out. Physically forced us out of the camps. But the fires that were burning through that camp the entire time continue to burn in our hearts. We empowered people to stand back up against a government system that is that corrupt that they would do that to their own citizens. At Fort Berthold, where I'm from, where they're still fracking and extracting this oil that flows through this pipeline, we are doing water blessings and healing walks. We are doing toxic tours. We are showing people how we are continually being raped by a system that never wanted us as Native people in the first place. Because the United States has built its foundation on the rape and pillage of Native people. And that's what Standing Rock showed. It isn't something in a history book, it is still happening. We get out in our communities and we make our voices heard and we continue to fight back because that's what we have to do if we're going to change this corrupt system. We show people the rail lines, we bring them from all over the country, all over the states, show them what the toxicity looks like in the Bakken Shale oil formation. Why? Because Minne-Wauchoni. There is no coincidence that when we're pregnant, we carry our babies in water. Water is life. Minne-Wauchoni is water of life. Because literally it is the first life. It's how we come into being. I never knew how much it meant until I had my little one laying on my chest that moment she was born. And how we have to fight for those that don't have a voice. She is not even here to fight. She can't say, Mom, will I have water in 50 years? Will it be clean? So I have to. Same with the plants and the animals, the river, the Missouri River, the rights of nature. Who will speak on their behalf? We will. Because the next 7 generations are depending upon us. They're innocent because they are so close to the Creator. Please take a look here. Look at mazaskatalks.org because what we're doing is divesting in this campaign. We're taking our money out of the banks. We're taking back our power by taking their power away from them. This fight was not lost by any stretch of the means, and the fight is not over. We're continuing to fight in the Bakken, which is where the source of this pipeline comes from. And that is why we say keep it in the ground. Do not extract it in the first place. Waterprotectorlegal.org is where you can go and help those nearly 800 people who are still going through the court system right now, today, fighting against a crooked political system. And if you want to learn more, you can go to earthjustice.org and look at the litigation and then visit us at the Indigenous Environmental Network at indigenousrising.org. Let's not forget that just because it's not in mainstream media anymore, that we're not still there. Because we are. We're still there and we're still fighting and we still need the world to hear us. Matsige gods, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Any of the judges have any questions?
Le pido a Nati el favor de traducir, es posible. Muchas gracias por el coraje y la fuerza que has demostrado para hacer para dejar tu testimonio y tu fuerza es conmovedora. realmente, sobre todo por la capacidad que has tenido de poner al mismo tiempo imágenes de violencia y con imágenes de esperanza, de vida y de futuro. Esto es, a nivel de comunicación, es algo muy fuerte y te lo agradezco. Quería entender si cuáles son los derechos que tenéis reconocidos a nivel constitucional sobre la tierra, por supuesto. Y has mencionado, ahí también se vieron las fotos de un momento en que la policía se disculpó para los ataques, y quería entender si he entendido bien y si después de la disculpa hubo una sanción específica en contra de los que eran responsables de estos ataques, y si puedes decir algo más específico sobre los ataques a las mujeres. Es decir, ¿tú crees que hay un ataque intencional específico en contra de las mujeres que particularmente se dirige a las mujeres que defienden las tierras?
Gracias. So many questions. So, as far as land rights are concerned, it's a historic taking of our lands that we never ceded to the federal government. And so all of this industry, all of what happened, it's illegal. And it's on, the burden of proof is on us. There are over 400 treaties that were signed with the United States government. Not one of those was kept in the United States, not one. It's important that people understand that, because it's the systemic problem underlying all of this. The rights of nature, the rights of Mother Earth. As far as the police, it wasn't the police that apologized. No. We did a healing walk and we forgave them. After being attacked by them, we marched in Mandan to the police station and completely surrounded it and held hands in solidarity and forgave them for attacking us on October 27th. Because that is how we are as people. So it wasn't they who apologized to us. They didn't know what to do, actually. They didn't know how to think. They were like, oh, are they going to attack us? But we didn't. We sang a song outside of the offices, outside of the building. And I do think that this entire system is intentionally attacking women, because women are, in my culture and in many Native cultures, are the keepers of water. The women were the ones predominantly that first broke down the fences and ran into the fields, because we have blood memory. So when we saw those bulldozers scraping into the earth, it's that we could physically feel the pain within our own bodies. And when you're physically feeling pain, you need to do something to make it stop. And so it was women that ran out into the fields and jumped in front of the equipment, jumped on the equipment. And as such, were arrested, and many were treated horribly. Imagine being out in an action or a protest, and you're going out there to stand in solidarity, and you find yourself arrested. You sit there for hours and hours, you get put on a bus, you get taken to the police station where you're stripped completely naked. And you're told to bend over and cough, so we can make sure there's nothing up inside your anal cavities. And then you're kept, one girl naked in a jail cell all night long because she wanted to protect the water. And there was no justice. This was LaDonna Allard's daughter that this happened to. It's a violation against life to harm the water. And water is what gives life, which is a direct violation to women.
Candy, yes. Thank you so much for your presentation. Really honored to listen to it. I want to just sort of like step back a bit in terms of like, what's happening in terms of like the infrastructure of surveillance and the hardware that's used by the military and the police, and we have seen that from what your presentation and what we've been getting in the news is that the US police is getting more and more military type of equipment to do with protesters, and of course it feeds into the military industrial complex. Could you just maybe speak about the links between the increased militarization, increased military spending, and just criminalization of defenders? What has been your experience as protectors of Mother Earth?
At the camp, there were a lot of things that started happening. There was a company that was hired called Tiger Swan. Tiger Swan was a military operation that would operate in places like Afghanistan and Iraq against terrorists. They would go, they call them terrorists, the United States government. And so Tiger Swan was hired. It's a mercenary, it's a private mercenary company. But even more than that, there's articles that came out it's called The Intercept. So The Intercept started putting out a series of reports that talked about how bad it was at camp, because we would have our phones and they would do really weird things. Like they would make, my phone, I remember one time it was like, and then it shut off. And I was like, what the heck? And then I would have a full battery and all of a sudden it would be drained. And so what we found out was that they had something called stingrays that were out there. And the stingrays could suck all of the information off your phone and take everything, whatever text, hey mom, how's it going? Your text messages, emails, and they could pull whatever information. They still have all of that information from anybody that was near a stingray. They were using potentially something as much as $500 million per day for the equipment that was brought in. And what these intercept reports are showing is that this is not legal. Even within the US government system, they're supposed to have some kind of permissions from I don't know, the president or beyond to be able to do these things, and they didn't. It was just happening. A lot of this came out after Standing Rock. We found bugs, listening devices in the hotel room at the casino where some of the water protectors were staying. The helicopters flying around and an airplane flying around 24/7. They had drones, but they told us it was illegal for us to have drones. They put in a no-fly zone when they knew they were going to attack us, except for the police and the helicopters, and they could all fly. But we couldn't have drones, so they were continually trying to shoot them down. There was something like $38 million they said that was spent to have police there for that time. And recently what happened was this company, Energy Transfer Partners, paid the state of North Dakota $15 million for that. So you have an oil company that's paying off a state who repress their own people. And that's apparently okay. And it's not. It's all so, it just brings it to the open how crooked the system is. There are so many numbers, but I do encourage people to look at those 7 intercept reports, and it shows how they were illegally tracking us and following us and finding information about us. We had infiltrators in the camp. There was at one point, this is from Tiger Swan's own records, 90 infiltrators that were in the camp posed as water protectors. So when you would hear about water protectors being the bad ones, it was their own infiltrators that would come in and provoke. They were on our side of the line, throwing things at the police, trying to egg other people on to do it. I was attacked personally and nothing ever happened. There was a young guy named Colin Neary who has been in the movement since 2012. So this is before the camps. We thought he was our friend. Well, we caught him on video when I'm standing in front of the police with the feather in one hand. He comes up behind me and he points. And I can see the police across from me nod, but I don't see him. He points at my head and then he pushes me into the police line. But for some reason, I go flying that way and he flies into the police. So I didn't get arrested. I had medicine with me. And you can hear him in the video. Thank you, thank you. But you've seen how they were in collusion with each other. And so, but there's video, you can hear him saying, "Get me up." Who's he talking to? Who? So it was a crazy mixture of people, and this is not okay. There's so many depths, so much levels to the amount of technology that they use and the militarization of this that needs to continue to come out into the light. But that's the good thing about Standing Rock, is that we were willing to take a stand and to show the rest of the world what this United States industrial complex is really all about. Protecting their own interests, which is when at the bottom of the day, at the end of the day, it's all about money and who's going to be in control and who's going to be the #1 powerhouse of the entire world. And the rest of the world should really, really, really be concerned and push back against the United States industrial complex. Because if they can do that to their own citizens, imagine what they would do to other people.
What they already do.
What they already do to other people. But it's under the covers, it's under the sheets, it's hidden. We need to keep doing this to bring it to the light and attention. That's why we do what we do as water protectors. It's not just about protecting us in the US, it's about protecting all of us around the whole entire world.
Well, I applaud, I don't even know a good word to say, applaud, it seems so insignificant, but I thank you for the strength that you and Dallas and everybody at Standing Rock has shown, both there and to the rest of us. Your work has been and continues to be an inspiration to all of us. And we do have some other Indigenous peoples who unfortunately share similar stories, but it's these discussions that allow us to be able to start to make change. And thank you so much for sharing your change. And we will honor that as we move forward and talk about it and act on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Добрый день. Good afternoon. My name is Yana Nagasheva. I'm from Russia, from southwest Siberia. And sorry for my English. I will read my speech in English. And I'm sorry my colleague could not come. And the population of my short people, I belong to the short people, and the population size is about 10–12,000. The short people is one of the indigenous minority peoples of the Russian Federation who live in the Kemmer region of the Russian South Siberia. The short speak the Siberian Turkic language and are culturally closely related to Altaians and other South Siberian Turkic peoples. Like many indigenous peoples of Russia, the Shor traditionally practice shamanism, and our deep spiritual connection with our ancestral territories is expressed in ceremonies and sacrifices to the spirits of our forests and mountains. Our traditional economic activities include cattle breeding, hunting, fishing, gathering. Don't go. This is my district. Gathering as the main providers of food. And today, the shore are the most urbanized indigenous minority peoples of Russia, with 3/4 living in urban settlements and only around 25% in rural places. By implication, we are particularly affected by cultural and linguistic assimilation. The shore language is used exclusively in small settlements. These settlements are those most endangered by coal mining today. Kemerovo Oblast, Kemerovo district, is Russia's #1 coal mining region. Raw materials account for almost 90% of its production, and more than 100 coal mining companies operate within the region, producing about 200 million metric tons of every year and accounting for 60% of Russia's total production. In 2030, Russia exported about 140 million tons, or 45% of its total production. Most of the exports originated from my district, from Kemerovo district. This picture about traditional occupations. Russia exports coal to such countries as Great Britain, Netherlands, Germany, and other countries. Over the last decade, the output of Russia's coal mining industry has quadrupled. This is our nature. While exports have tripled. Coal mining in Kemerovo region is mostly open cast mining, with 2/3 and Kemerovo's coal being extracted on the surface. Mining produces huge amounts of wastewater, much of which is disposed untreated into rivers. These wastewaters contain large amounts of toxic chemicals such as petroleum products, phenols and heavy metals, significantly increasing the health risks for mine-shore people, for whom fishing is one of the principal traditional economic activities and sources of our daily diet. Kazas is my village, is a shore community which is located on Mrasu River and mostly affected by coal mining. Until the early 1970s, the Mrasu River was clean and fed by mountain sources. The rivers were an important source of food, where villagers would catch grayling, linnock and tamian fishes. Since the appearance of the first coal mining companies, the fish started to disappear. Then water became unfit for drinking and cooking, and the Kazas village had to be supplied with fresh water by other means. Hunters reported that mining operations had almost emptied our hunting grounds, depriving us of the important source of income. The biggest challenges for the locals had started at 2005, when the Russian government issued a license for the coal mining company Yuzhnaya, which started to operate in close vicinity to the Kazakh village. The inhabitants were kept unaware of the license conditions until the company destroyed the sacred our shore mountain. The name of our mountain, Karagaylash, and had started to work just near the houses. This is our village. This is picture from Google Map, sacred mountain near our village. And the company and regional authorities pressed the shore people to sell the houses and pieces of land to the company for insignificant prices, but 5 families refused to sell their houses. All their houses were burned because of the arson attacks of unknown criminals during the winter 2013-2014. One of the houses was from my father. We are sure that it was organized by company, as previously its managers threatened people to destroy our houses, which were in the way of the coal mining operations. Today the village is destroyed totally. All the villagers have been forced to leave. They receive no compensation. Our activists who fight to restore traditional lands are threatened by authorities and security services. Now the same companies, this is about our truth. Now the same companies which work in the shore areas in Kemero region have started to extract coal for European consumers in the Russian Arctic, where they threaten the traditional lifestyle and communities' lands of minutes reindeer herders. The other great challenge for the Arctic indigenous people's traditional lifestyle is a global climate change, which changes animals' traditional routes, reduces the sea ice cover and melts old animals' burials, which become a cause of extremely dangerous diseases like Siberian anthrax. It's well known that the Arctic warming is higher and faster than in other parts of the world. Coal power stations are one of the main causes for the global climate change. Additionally to the general CO2 emissions, such stations produce large amounts of soot, that means carbon particles, which are carried away by wind to the Arctic, cover the snow and make the Arctic warm faster. Thus, the indigenous peoples of Russia suffer twice from the coal mining companies, which destroyed and pollute our traditional lands, and from the climate change which destroys the indigenous people's lifestyle. This is our river, and you can see, yes, dyed rivers of my Sharia land. Yeah, this is Black River, small river. Include to our big river. This picture we made from the drone. And this picture was made last week. We don't want to live on moon's lands. And now I would like to show the video with photos by my sister about our village, Kazas village. It's only open moon's land, moons. And we are afraid that the same situation will be with our villages. And I don't know, I write answer to your question, but I can speak more that in 2015 we prepared information to United Nations, to Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. And this year was session in August. And we also prepared the alternative report for committee. And we are glad, we're glad that the members of committee heard us and they prepared concluding observations with recommendations of our case, and this recommendations to government, Russian government. They said about they wrote about free, prior, informed consent, but our Russian government don't want hear about free, prior, informed consent. Yeah, it's yeah. Yes, it's about my activity. Yeah. I worked as a teacher of Russian language in Russian school, but 2 years ago I was from school. Yeah, it's connected with my activities. Yes, with my human rights activity, and many persons in our organization, same situation, and we like how I say, our activists who fight to restore traditional lands are threatened by authorities and security services.
One more question from one of our judges.
Bueno, le agradezco la información y el video porque nos ha descubierto también un mundo. La pregunta concreta es si las empresas que están explotando? ¿Son empresas del Estado o son empresas privadas rusas o son empresas privadas extranjeras?
It's business, yes. It's business, and many companies have offshore. Yes, offshore. We don't know about where to go our coal. We know only that Germany and Great Britain buy coal from my district, but many companies Many companies are not many companies violate our rights not only of indigenous peoples, of all peoples who live in district. Sorry for my English. Sorry. Thank you.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers, distinguished president, distinguished lawyers, distinguished prosecutors. My name is Stefan Mikaelsson and I am an Arctic indigenous parliamentarian. I consider myself to be that after being part of the Sami Parliament, being one of the members for Sami Parliament's Swedish branch since establishments in 1993, and out of those who have been since 1993, I am the oldest one. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and if you feel free to proceed to provide the facts and information for the tribunal.
Thank you very much. I will continue with my statement that is a draft statement and was brought to the prosecutors and others just a few days before my departure from Sweden. I will show you some photos from the world and cultural heritage of Laponia in Sweden. This is still unharmed territory. My name is Stefan Mikaelsson, and I am here together with Åsa Simona to present a brief statement about the culture, genocide and theft of natural resources that was and has been going on. It was organized in Sami traditional territories during the last 100 years. But first, do we express our gratitude to the organizers for the kind invitation. We are grateful to the good forces that made it possible for us to attend. And I will now go to a historical background, and it is maybe some boring in the beginning, but it is also very important that we go to the historical background because we walk to the future in the footprints of our ancestors. 1917 was a violent year in Europe. The World War was raging on the continent, and it was the February Revolution in Russia, the attempt to have autonomy in Finland, etc., etc. In those times in Sweden, all bread and flour were seized and rationed. During spring 1917, there were hunger demonstrations in 23 different Swedish cities. And when the conditions were as worst and most challenging, then pioneer and activist Elsa Laula, a Sami woman, and her forefighter Daniel Mortensson, a Sami male, and they were not a couple, in the lead, did prepare to build the Sami future. The first transboundary Sami Nation Assembly to be held in Trondheim on Norwegian side of Sápmi in 1917. A similar Sami National Assembly was held in Stade, Östersund, on Swedish side a year later. Elsa Laula's pamphlet, Facing Life or Death, was also read in the Swedish Parliament in 1918. However, it can be noted that despite the apparent and visible success of these two different assembly meetings, they could not influence the anti-Sami forces of the time that ruled in the parliament and which were widespread also in the Swedish society. The birth of Swedish democracy. On the 19th of October 1917, the Swedish government of Liberal Eden was established in office. In 1919, this government did agree with Norway about the second reindeer husbandry convention, which meant forced dislocation of no Sami-speaking Sami families, and also the distribution of more than 20,000 reindeers and steer them from the traditional pastures. A brutal forced displacement occurred. This took place across the pure grazing natural boundaries of the reindeer herds and also across the borders, the language borders of the Sami languages. In the more southern areas that would be prepared for the arrival of the displaced Sami, dissolution of traditional Sami cultures was often prepared as a consequence. In 1918, in the government of Eden was also Social Democrat Hjalmar Branting. Unfortunately, Hjalmar Branting signed the written proposal for the establishment of the State Racial Biology Institute. On Friday the 13th, May 1921, did the Swedish Parliament pass a decision to establish this institute without a vote. Hjalmar Branting was also rewarded the Nobel Peace Prize the same year and took his second long-standing government as Prime Minister on October 13, 1921. Nude photography and skull measurements. These were some of the methods used by the State Race Biological Institute in Uppsala when the Sami were to be studied and mapped. At that time, the Sami people were to be considered as the biggest danger to the Swedish national state and for the Swedish citizens because of our degenerative impact. Even though I dare to name a few names, it can not be so easy, so we can claim that anything that struck or hit the Sami nation easily can be blamed on those single individuals in leading positions. Instead, the only conclusion is that the government and the Swedish Parliament created a systematic error that since then prevented a negotiated solution between the representative of the Sami delegations, the Sami nations, together with the representatives of the Swedish government and the Parliament. Ultimately, one can reasonably say that the Swedish parliamentary system with universal and equal voting rights was founded on the basis of racism. The Sami culture was struck with a cultural genocide already in the beginning of their democratic years. As a result, the historical largest theft that could happen in Sweden, a theft that was also politically organized, when the theft of the Sami nation's collectively owned natural resources took place by the Swedish state. Remarkably enough, the discrimination ombudsman, DO, stated almost 100 years later, 21st of March 2013, then DO, discriminating ombudsman, stated, "Racism is a force that permeates Western society and underpins the structural and institutional discrimination in Europe and Sweden." Those who live in the East. Stora Sjöfallet, or in Julev Sami language, Stor Morkegorche, is a waterfall in the Great Lule River. The fall was about 160 cubic meters, among the largest and most powerful in Europe. The water body is located in the northwest part of Jokkmokk's municipality. The waterfall was previously very magnificent and was often called Niagara of the North. It was the main reason for the establishment of the national park, and these are some photos of Stora Sjöfallet, the national park. In 1909, the area around the fall became one of Sweden's first national parks. The area was very difficult to reach, and it could take up to a week to reach the waterfall. But after building the hydropower plants in periods 1910 to 1914, this was the waterfall in Stora Sjöfallet was easier to reach. In 1919, the parliament broke out of the naval system above and was created the Sorvadam Regulatory Reservoir. With the construction of the Porridge hydropower plant, the start of exploitation and destroyment of the Luleå River was set. For efficient and availability according to electricity demand, the water must be stored in regulating reservoirs for the winter time. Sorvadam is today Sweden's second largest after Vänern, which is slightly regulated. I have been talking so much about the Luleå River. Where does the name come from? It comes from Luleå Sami language, and Luleå means those who lives in the east. The word was considered to mean the forest Sami. If every river has its people, then the Luleå River would be the river for the forest Sami. Unfortunately, the forest Sami culture was of less value seen in the eyes and perspective of Swedish Parliament, the Swedish government, and the state agencies. In early 1900s, state forces considered it necessary to specify the Sami rights in detail. So a Sami committee was elected by the Swedish Parliament, and they had a hard working time ahead of them, and they wanted to create remaining reindeer husbandry which only had the real reindeer herders who filled the demands from the Swedish state. It was not up to the Sami individuals themselves to decide if they wanted to be a reindeer herder or not. The state should allow them to use and carry on with their old culture first. The provisions after 1919 Sami Committee, the law was changed in 1928, the law for reindeer husbandry. And the provisions of the 1928 reindeer husbandry law was designed without regard to Sami traditions regarding hunting and fishing, or reindeer husbandry. This is evident from several legal proceedings in the 1940s, where the law enforcement authorities showed great eagerness in punishing the Sami who were not considered to be members of the local Sami villages, and they were punished for illegal hunting and fishing, despite they were using and maintaining their own culture. The government and parliament has not yet shown any interest in bringing about a change in the current situation, which was established first in 1928 and later repeated in 1971's law. And as a colonisateur and as a Western government, Western parliament, they also realized that the most efficient to bring indigenous culture to its knee is to make it discriminating to be indigenous women and to transfer the culture, indigenous culture, to the children, to the grandchildren, to your neighbors' children, etc. Meanwhile, the emasculation of the Sami culture did continue from the side of one state, and the so-called development of the Luleå River Valley, it continued. Dams and hydropower stations were built one after another, and finally 15 hydropower stations were constructed to the full length of the river. No longer could the mighty salmon runs take place in the river. No longer could the Sami people or the small-scale farming settlers harvest the river for their need to fish in order to get fresh food. This was before the existence of supermarket. Food sovereignty of the inhabitants along the Luleå River, which could control the access and sovereignty of the food, are so valuable and so important that it cannot be described in words. And it was not so long time ago that it was hunger demonstrations in Sweden, and it is with fear we notice the destroyment of the possibilities to have control over the food production, also in the north. Those bad times might come back sooner than expected. The forest on the both sides of the slopes of the river valley has been clear-cutted, and roads has been built everywhere. It's only 500 meters to the nearest road wherever you are, except in protected areas. Gravel pits, power lines, and also later plans to establish an open pit mine affect the environment. All this also affects culture remaining. Both the Sami as well as the settlers' cultural landscape has been seriously damaged. An industrial landscape is created by the Europeans and the global market's demands for free access to indigenous territories in the Arctic. The Sami cultural landscape has been, with all its diversity, has been replaced forever. Access to unharmed taiga with the remaining old forest will not only be valuable for reindeer herding, but also for saving and protecting the resilience against the climate change. Instead, all the harm of the environment in all its aspects will make the climate change escalate in an even more profound way in the Arctic, in northern Sweden and Finland, member of the European Union. It is difficult to see a future with improvements in that process, which has led more or less to the creation of an Arctic desert. It's not such a pleasant reading, but I will also have to say that the Sami people have never had better opportunity than we have now to talk for ourselves and to know what is good for us. Since the creation of the Sami Parliament and our common working body, Sami Parliament Council. In February this year, we had 100 years anniversary of the first border crossing land meeting that Elsa Laula was part of initiating, and her birthday was also made as a public Sami flag day. So we could honor Elsa Laula and also indigenous women of the Arctic and the Sami people. In 6th of February next year, we will have 100 years anniversary of the second border crossing land meeting that was held in Östersund, Stare, Östersund in Sweden. So important are those two meetings for the Sami nation. The Sami nation was established, it was confirmed in border treaty from 1751. Today, the indigenous peoples of the circumpolar Arctic and maybe the world can unite with this phrase, with this poem from Paulus Utsi. As long as we have water where the fish lives, as long as we have land where reindeer graze and wanders, as long as we have land where the wild can hide, we have consolation on this earth. When our homes are no longer visible and our land is devastated, where shall we live then? Paulus Utsi. Thank you for your attention.
So my name is Ousa Sima. I come from the second northernmost tribe, a village in northern Sweden. We have 51 Sami villages, and I'm almost the northernmost. We have a pasturing ground on the Swedish side, where we live at winter time. We move to the Norwegian side in the spring, where we are with the reindeer. at summertime. I am not working as a reindeer herder because I'm an artist, I work in theater. But I do have a reindeer herd because that is the only way in Sweden to have legal rights as a Sami person. So I have kept a little herd for myself and a small herd for my 2 sons so that they are not losing their land rights and the rights to be moving and living in the area which was given to our tribe, which we have used for hundreds and hundreds of years. When I grew up, my parents, my grandmothers, grandfathers, they always said to me, the land, this land has chosen you. This land has chosen us, the Sami people. We are here to live with the land and to protect the land and all what is in it. Today, when I'm working with the Sami theater, that's in Kiruna, and Kiruna has a huge mine, and it's growing, and it's growing, and growing. Outside my window, when I go to my little theater, I see this black mountain, just exactly like the photos that Jana was showing from the shore people. And during nighttime, they make the explosions when they mine. And sometimes it is so loud that I hear my porcelain shaking in the cupboards. Kiruna, the city, with its mine, has to be moved. They have started to pack it down and moving it to another more safe area. Obviously, the ground underneath is so hollow that it's dangerous to live there. Anytime the land can just fall down into the holes. When I was brought up, I was told by my parents and my ancestors that we have spiritual brothers and sisters that live under the ground. And they are here to help us as human beings. They are here to keep a balance between the spiritual world and the world that we reside in, this world. And often when I hear the explosions under the ground, I wonder, where are they going, our spiritual sisters and brothers, the invisible ones that only a few people can see? Where do they go when the mine is being dug out? And what will happen to us if they leave? Where do we go? Because we need them and they need us. Kiruna, the city of Kiruna, is surrounded by many Sami reindeer herding villages. I had the opportunity to follow one Sami chief from one of the villages to an area which actually is locked by the mining company. They are allowed, the tribal people, to go there because it was an old path for the reindeer to walk when they were migrating. And the path was cut off for 50 years ago, but still the reindeer want to walk that old path. So it's very dangerous for the reindeer to move there because they can fall down the cliffs that the mining has created. So they go there, the Sami people, and just move the reindeer when they still think that they are on the path that used to be theirs and the Sami people's for a long time ago. And that land is dead. It's a moon landscape. When you stomp on the ground, there's dark smoke coming up, rising meters from the ground. It's dead ground. This used to be the Sami people's land for the reindeer. Mining is a big problem in the Sami area. And the Swedish state has a little bit soft rules and easily gives permits to companies from abroad to start digging for minerals. And usually what happens, we've seen it the past years, what happens is that the mining companies, after a few years, they go bankrupt and they disappear. And they leave all the waste on the area which is Sami people's ground. And nobody cleans it up. And it's toxic waste and very dangerous for the nature and of course for the humans and for the animals. In my work with the theater, for a year ago, we did a research. We were very inspired. We heard that there was a rumor that there might be a truth and reconciliation process in Sweden towards the Sami people. But we usually know when such announcements come, it will take hundreds of years until they are done. So we decided within the theater, the artist group, to make our own truth and reconciliation process. We chose 5 different Sami communities where we stayed, where we interviewed people, where we talked with people to get information of this, what is specifically happening in that village or that area. We started in Kiruna, the mining town, and I talked about. In Kiruna, we have a big problem with a wave of suicide among young Sami men. I enrolled a lot of psychologists in this project, and we did the research, what's going on, why these men? And we understand from the treatment that these young men have got is that it is the mining that is the problem. Because a lot of the young men have been reindeer herders or dream about being reindeer herders, but there is no more ground. There is no more land for using for reindeer herding and to be able to survive. So these young men, they fight for the land. They are very aware of land rights, but they have no bread on the table. So what do? They take work at the mine. Usually they take night shifts so that nobody knows that they are at work. And at daytime, when they are up on ground, they are fighting for Sami rights and land rights. It's a pretty difficult situation to live when you have to sell your land for getting the bread and still fighting for your rights. And these young men are usually the target group for suicide. As I said, I was brought up with the sentence, this land has chosen me, this land has chosen us, the Sami people. And when we lose the land, then we lose the culture, and our traditional knowledge disappears. Because we are not a culture where we store our traditional knowledge in books or in recorded material. It is passed on from generation to generation. Often when you are moving in the land, when you are in the arms of our mother, the land, that's when the teaching is happening. And if we lose our land, there is a big risk also that a lot of knowledge that we have accumulated for a long, long, long time will disappear. And I feel very strongly that the Sami people, we are able to determine our future. We are able to choose the right choices for our culture to continue living and flourishing. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for either or both of the speakers today?
When I was walking in, I heard the word suicide. From where I come from, our indigenous peoples, when you experience a process of separation from who you are, your identity, including language, with the imposition of an outside dominant culture. And this has to do with this question of defenders of the earth. And that involves the people who are the teachers and defenders of culture. Can you talk about how the culture is a key component of being a defender of who we are, but how that affects the psychology and the emotions? Why is it that our young people, indigenous peoples throughout the world, the suicide rates are pretty high? I don't know if that's a situation with some of the Sami. It's hard to talk about. But as a mother and a woman, perhaps, I don't know you that much, but I think that's a strong factor here, is what happens in that process when we talk about the rights of Mother Earth and the relationship through the culture of our people as defenders of who we are. Thank you.
Well, the process of colonialism in my country and probably in your country as well, and in many other indigenous communities, has been going on for a very, very long time. It didn't come with just the mines or pollution or whatever. My parents, they were in a boarding school system where they were separated from their parents, living 9 months a year in a school where language was not allowed to be spoken, where you were separated from your brothers and sisters. So I've been thinking very much, how did that affect them? You know, from the age of 7 till the age of being 14, not being able to live with a loving parent, but being in an institution where you are punished if you speak your language, if you behave in a way that is not suitable for the majority society. So of course that has affected their ability to be parents. I'm pretty sure of that, which they have passed on to me, which I might be passing on to my children. And with this psychic unhealth that is among indigenous people, we really need to talk about these things, and we need to support each other, and we have to also be able to share the pain with each other. Then it might get a little bit easier to carry the load when you know that there's a lot of million other people with the same experience.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions from the judges? Just one last question then. What would you like the tribunal, what do you ask of the tribunal in terms of their judgment, their remedy, their recommendations today and tomorrow?
Well, it's a very small little wish, and it's that we ourselves get the right to decide what happens on our traditional grounds. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And with the prosecutor's permission, I will try to end with a spiritual or maybe cultural ending. It will only take 1 minute. In 1919, you heard the government of Eden were creating hell of Eden for the Sami people. And one of the families that were forced to move or dislocate were the family of Paulus Utsi. I just read a poem of him. He also made another poem that was put music to by a colleague in Sami Parliament, Lars Wilhelm Svone, and I have his authorization to perform it if the prosecutor allows it. And the text translated into English sounds like this. Goodbye, my homeland. Stay with health. The paths have become narrower, and it is with heavy step that I am forced to abandon my birthplace. Words from alien people are intruding in the language I learned from mother. Guaktu yenan bat sedervan vat sin balgat letal baskun vueste mielen losses lavkin gueit färfen shattan baikit liekalinis etnikielas amasani daketsai. Thank you very much.